Hi everyone, this is Pennsylvania attorney Evan Gutman here with video number 22 of my video legal education series, which focuses on the good moral character requirement to obtain a law license and the problematic issues associated with it described in my book, State Bar Admissions and the Bootlegger's Son. My book, State Bar Admissions and the Bootlegger's Son, is available on both of my websites, which are gutmanvaluations.com and heavensadmissions.com. Both websites also contain two other books that I wrote, one of which is a supplement to the book, and the other is a fictional novel, a kind of comical, fun fictional novel titled Heaven's Admissions Process, which compares the criteria for being admitted into heaven with the moral character criteria for obtaining a law license on earth. It's basically a fun book. Both websites also contain links to PDFs associated with this video legal series. So if you're viewing this on Facebook, you will see there's a link to a PDF file. And you just click on that and it'll give you the written material pertaining to this video. I maintain two Facebook pages. One is my personal page and the other is titled Judicial Constructive Criticism Network. I also have a YouTube page with the videos that also link to my website, and that is also titled Judicial Constructive Criticism Network. So in video number 22 here, in video number 22 here, I'm going to address two additional U.S. Supreme Court justices from the chapter in my book titled When U.S. Supreme Court Justices Raised a Little Hell, which is chapter 21 of the book. Today I'm going to discuss first Justice Hugo Black. Hugo Black has an incredible record for enhancing civil liberties on the court during his tenure there, which was from 1937 to 1971. His promotion of civil liberties is equaled only by that of Justice Thurgood Marshall, who I will also be talking about today, and Justice William O. Douglas, who I spoke about in the previous video. This is essentially part 2 of chapter 21, when U.S. Supreme Court justices raised a little hell. The previous video is part 1. So Justice Black, as a promoter of civil liberties, was to a large extent viewed as a dissenter on the court, similar to Justice Douglas. In fact, it's fair to say that dissent, the concept of dissent, was in Hugo Black's blood. More specifically, in the 1700s, a man named Elijah Toland, who was an ancestor of Justice Black, was sentenced to be beheaded for his activities against the crown. But before the sentence could be executed, he fled the country and came to America. Another ancestor of Justice Black, named Robert Emmet, also of the same Toland family, what a surprise, was hanged in 1803 after participating in the murder of the Irish Chief Justice. So suffice to say, Hugo Black's heritage was that of dissenters, to state the matter mildly. Now, what became incredible about Justice Black's career, the most amazing thing, even though he became a huge promoter of civil liberties and civil rights, as incredible as it may seem, he was actually a member of the Ku Klux Klan, KKK, before he became a U.S. Senator and before he became a U.S. Supreme Court Justice. That's a contradiction that's difficult to deal with, but it can be explained, as you will see within this video, or here within this video, I should say. Hugo was a high school dropout at age 16. He then went to Birmingham Medical School. He's from Alabama and became an Alabama judge before he became a U.S. Senator. He went to Birmingham Medical College, dropped out of there also before going to law school. He then went to law school, and in 1911, he became an Alabama trial court judge. One of the stories about his tenure as an Alabama trial court judge was that a drunk old black man was brought into his court for violating liquor laws. Judge Hugo Black fined the man $2, which the drunk did not have, and Judge Black then proceeded to loan him the $2 to pay the fine, which is kind of a funny story. In 1923, he became a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Unbelievable. For a judge who became a huge promoter of civil rights and civil liberties, but it will be explained within this video. He took the Klan oath, the KKK oath. He shared its platform and its ideology. The most that can be said for this is that he was subsequently viewed as a traitor to the organization for his later contributions to furthering civil rights. He resigned from the Ku Klux Klan 3 years after joining in 1926. And he did so just before he began his campaign to become a U.S. Senator. The KKK supported his candidacy to be a U.S. Senator, and the KKK helped him get elected to be a U.S. Senator. While a senator on Capitol Hill, he led a committee that was investigating lobbying. And it is said that his investigative tactics were ruthless, absolutely ruthless. That's quite a far leap from the Hugo Black, the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black, that would later condemn state bar admission committees for their investigative tactics, which shows that maybe to a certain extent people tend to learn in life. In 1937, Franklin Delano Roosevelt nominated him to be a U.S. Supreme Court Justice. From the moment his nomination was announced, there were rumors, but they were only rumors. They didn't have proof. There were rumors about his connections with the KKK, but no one could find concrete proof. It wasn't until after he was sworn in as a U.S. Supreme Court Justice that the proof was disclosed to the found and disclosed to the public. When his membership in the KKK became publicly known, senators and congressmen demanded that he immediately resign as a U.S. Supreme Court Justice. And now here's where it becomes interestingly explainable as to how he became such a supporter of civil liberties and civil rights. In response to the disclosure that he was in the KKK, his house was picketed. The public was outraged. The nation was in an uproar. In October 1937, he addressed the nation, the entire nation, on radio about the KKK issue. His audience, radio audience in that speech of 40 million was the largest ever, except for that which was heard when King Edward VIII abdicated his throne as King of England the year before. In his radio address, Justice Black admitted that he had joined the KKK. He stated that he had resigned. He stated that he repudiated it. He characterized his membership as a mistake and asserted that he owed no allegiance to them. the KKK became furious with him. They felt they had totally been betrayed by the man they had supported once he became a U.S. Supreme Court justice. And with that, here's where it all becomes explained. With that, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black became a different man. His support from the state of Alabama was gone, and so he consistently ruled against Alabama while on the court. The people of Alabama felt that he had betrayed them. Hugo, on the other hand, Hugo Black felt he had to prove to the nation that he did not ascribe to the KKK ideology, and so his opinions reflected support for civil rights and civil liberties. But simply, they felt he had betrayed them, so he did, in fact, prove that he did not support their ideology, perhaps out of self-interest, actually, perhaps out of self-interest. The first thing he did as a U.S. Supreme Court justice, he hired a Jewish clerk, a black messenger, and a Catholic secretary. He was intent on proving that he repudiated the KKK. So it's a life of contradictions. He really was great friends with Justice William O. Douglas, my hero. But, you know, he was in the KKK, and he was a huge supporter of civil rights and civil liberties on the court. So he flipped basically because they felt well, whether it's because they felt he had betrayed him or not, I guess it's somewhat questionable, but in any event, they did feel he betrayed them, and he was intent on proving that he was not part of them anymore. The next justice that I'm going to talk about here is Justice Thurgood Marshall, also one of my favorite justices. Marshall was the great-grandson of a slave, but also the grandson of a Union soldier during the Civil War. In 1988, he told a group of judges and lawyers who questioned him about the Supreme Court's increasingly conservative composition. He stated kind of rebelliously, "Don't worry, I am going to outlive those bastards." I like that statement. Justice Marshall's elementary school principal would send recalcitrant students to the school's basement with a copy of the Constitution. Thurgood Marshall, in the biography, it stated that he spent many hours in the basement, and with a copy of the Constitution, he said, quote, "Before I left that school," he later told a reporter, "I knew the entire Constitution by heart." He got married. He and his wife enjoyed the nightlife. They frequented Harlem nightclubs and after-hours jazz clubs. He also loved to gamble at the racetrack. He was a champion of the poor, minorities, and those unempowered in society. He was a champion of the underdog. He also argued and won the seminal 1954 U.S. Supreme Court case of Brown versus Board of Education. He's the guy that won it. When he retired, his dissatisfaction with the court was exemplified by his retiring statement, which was, quote, "Power, not reason, is the new currency of this court's decision-making." His pinnacle of influence was during the Warren Court years. Now, during those years in the 1960s, one of the main topics of contention at the U.S. Supreme Court was that of pornography. And as incredible as it may sound, they used to have a situation where in order to determine whether a movie was to be considered pornographic or not, all justices of the court would view the movie. They would view the pornographic movie. And the day on which they viewed the pornographic movies that were before the court for a decision was literally called, and I'm not kidding you on this, it was called at the U.S. Supreme Court, quote, "Dirty Movie Day." Dirty Movie Day, unquote. Marshall did more for civil rights and civil liberties than anybody other than perhaps Justices Douglas and Hugo Black And yet, surprisingly, and I don't know why this is, Justice Marshall really did not get along with Justice Douglas. I love them both. But Justice Marshall and Justice Douglas personally just did not get along to each other, even though they signed on with the same opinions quite often. In 1935, before becoming a U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Marshall won his first major civil rights victory. He won a suit to integrate the University of Maryland, which is the same University of Maryland Law School, which is the same school that had denied him admission years previously. He was representing a black prospective law student who applied, and the law student received a letter back from the university that stated as follows: President Pearson has instructed me today to return to you the application form and the money order, as the university does not accept Negro students, unquote. Just telling him right off the bat that he wasn't getting in because of his skin color. Marshall won that case, and when he retired from the court in 1991, reflecting back upon his own denial of admission from that law school and having won the decision from the U.S. Supreme Court to integrate it, Marshall characterized the situation as follows, quote, "It was sweet revenge, and I enjoyed it to no end," unquote. One more story here about Justice Marshall. In the 1940s, when he was trying to uncover discrimination into booking activities and practices of Florida hotels, on one occasion, I love this story, on one occasion he called a travel agent, and the travel agent agreed to reserve a room for him, not knowing that he wasn't black at the time. It was a phone call. So the travel agent reserves the room, and then after the room is reserved, Marshall then asked the question, baiting the travel agent essentially. Marshall then asked the question, quote, "Excuse me, is this hotel restricted?" Unquote. The travel agent then replies, "Oh, Mr. Marshall, I didn't know you were Jewish," because discrimination in Florida was as prevalent among Jewish people as it was among black people. So the travel agent says, "Oh, Mr. Marshall, I didn't know you were Jewish." At which point Marshall then pretends to have a very heavy black dialect. And he responds as follows, stating, quote, "Ah, sister, have I got news for you," unquote. He ultimately became counsel for the NAACP, and in 1954, he won the historic case of Brown versus Board of Education, then went on the U.S. Supreme Court, where he did a fantastic job promoting civil rights and civil liberties. And there was rumor that at one point in time, his phone may have been tapped, and that basically people were eavesdropping on his phone calls. And he wasn't really too concerned about it, because even though he thought it was tapped, he joked that, quote, he said, all they would have heard was me cussing and my wife gossiping, unquote. So love Thurgood Marshall, Hugo Black, William O. Douglas, and Stephen Field, who I spoke about in the prior video. Anyway, that's today's video. We'll have the next video on within the next few days, 3, 4, 5, 2, whatever, soon. And remember, love right, don't fight. Bye, everybody.